I never thought a simple family dinner could feel like a battlefield. But that night in Franklin it did. One moment I was passing the mashed potatoes, the next, the words hit me like frozen steel. Nobody needs your money or you. The air didn't just hang heavy, it collapsed. My parents, stone-faced, delivered their verdict as if it had been rehearsed. Madison, my younger sister, barely blinked before echoing it herself, almost like she'd been waiting for permission to speak her truth. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I stayed quiet, letting their words sink in. Because silence, as it turns out, can be more powerful than any outburst. For years, I had believed that distance was the only thing separating me from a normal family life. Living in San Francisco, coding through late nights and endless deadlines, I convinced myself that busyness, distance, and ambition explained my absence. But the truth was deeper, darker, buried under decades of expectation, neglect, and family history no one wanted to talk about. Growing up in Franklin wasn't easy. Our house was small, smelled of motor oil and fabric softener, and seemed to hold its breath when money ran low. I remember the nights when the recession hit hardest, Mom whispering over unpaid bills, Dad pacing the hallway, and me lying awake pretending to sleep while I eavesdropped through the thin walls. I was 12. Madison was 10. And somewhere in that chaos, I made a promise to carry not just my fears but hers too. School became my refuge. I studied by flashlight so she could sleep. Teachers noticed the way I solved problems, especially chaos, and encouraged me to pursue computers. By high school, I was winning coding competitions and dreaming of a life beyond Franklin. A life that didn't smell like fear and overdue notices. Leaving for college meant more than escape. It meant taking every ounce of guilt and responsibility for my little sister with me. Even miles away, I kept trying to fix what I couldn't control. Dad's leaking pipes, the broken roof, the bills Mom couldn't pay. I sent money quietly, secretly. I helped Madison when she needed it too. Small loans, payments here and there, an SUV to help her run her boutique. All without acknowledgement because that was how love worked in my family. Quiet, unseen, expected. And for a while it worked. Until that dinner. I had hoped that night would be different. A chance to reconnect. But the moment I stepped into that dining room, I sensed it. Not loud. Not obvious. Just wrong. Mom barely lifted her eyes. Dad gave a stiff nod. And Madison, her smile was practiced, polite, empty. Every answer to my questions was clipped, rehearsed like some script I wasn't meant to follow. Then it happened. Dad set down his fork like a gavel striking a sentence. "We don't need your money, Kimberly," he said, eyes hard. Mom followed seamlessly. "Or you." And Madison? She didn't hesitate. She repeated it like the final note in a symphony of rejection. "Nobody needs your money or you." I froze. My chest tightened. The room seemed to tilt. I looked for any sign of hesitation in their eyes, any hint that someone might contradict them, but there was nothing. They had decided I didn't belong long before I sat down at that table. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. Not tears, not anger, clarity. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't defeated. I just needed to let go. I left the table without a word, stepped onto the porch, and let the cold Tennessee night wash over me. The air was sharp, metallic, biting at my skin. But it felt like freedom. 4 years I had been the fixer, the emergency fund, the family's invisible safety net. And now I could be just me. I walked to my car without looking back. No one followed. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Madison. And in that silence I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes being erased isn't a loss. Sometimes it's the first step toward finally being seen. I sat in my hotel room that night replaying every word, every glance, every deliberate omission. And then my phone buzzed. Elena Cook. My closest friend, the one who didn't flinch at the chaos I carried alone. Her voice was careful, soft. "Kim, did something happen tonight?" I swallowed. "Check Madison's Instagram," I said. Within moments, the truth was undeniable. Madison's boutique, her empire, her carefully curated self-made life, all built on the foundation I had funded quietly, faithfully, without a single word of acknowledgement. Post after post, she basked in praise she hadn't truly earned, and Franklin cheered her on without question. I felt anger, yes, but more than that I felt focus. Every payment, every loan, Every gift I'd given her over the years flashed before my eyes. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't cry. I simply realized, silence isn't surrender. Silence is the first move in a game they never knew I was playing. By sunrise, I wasn't the same person who had walked into that dining room. The town woke up, but I was already calculating my next step. Step 1, the SUV. Step 2, the boutique loan. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: control. Because if they erased me, if they pretended I didn't exist, then it was time to stop carrying everyone else's story and start writing my own. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below what you would have done in this situation. And if you're enjoying this story, give it a like, it really helps the channel. By mid-morning, Franklin had already begun its quiet chatter. But I wasn't in the mood for gossip. I had work to do. Every detail, every thread of my family's illusions, was now visible, and I had a plan forming as methodically as a program I'd once coded. The SUV was first. The one Madison flaunted in posts, the one she posed beside like it was the crown jewel of her self-made empire. Legally, it was still mine. I had purchased it to help her run her boutique, to keep her afloat when the town's small-town economy threatened to sink her dreams. The dealership answered quickly. My voice was calm, precise. I'm the titled owner. I need it returned immediately. No negotiation, no warning. Just action. The SUV, like a trophy of misplaced pride, would be back in my hands before she could even comprehend the consequences. While waiting for confirmation, I turned to the second piece, the boutique's loan. Thread and Willow, Madison's so-called empire, existed because years ago she had called me desperate, afraid she'd fail without help. I had co-signed the loan to save her dream, to keep her afloat, to honor a promise that had turned into an expectation. Now it was time to stop. An email to the bank. Short. Clear. I will no longer be making payments. Redirect all notices to the primary borrower. Click. Consequences weren't cruelty, they were clarity. Within 30 minutes, the SUV was gone. The dealership confirmed it, and a strange calm filled me. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just relief. The first domino had fallen. Elena arrived shortly after, her expression unreadable. Kim, she said quietly, people are already talking. Madison's posting cryptic stories, deleting comments. She's panicking. I raised an eyebrow, calm. Good. This was exactly the ripple I needed. By afternoon, Franklin was in a quiet frenzy. Messages from friends, distant relatives, and even casual acquaintances poured in. The town, once so quick to celebrate Madison as a self-made star, was beginning to notice inconsistencies. They were comparing posts, dates, and purchases, realizing something didn't add up. It was time for closure. Not revenge for the sake of anger, but truth for the sake of reality. I drove to Thread and Willow. The boutique looked smaller than I remembered, the paint dulled, the sparkle gone. Inside, chaos. Madison was mid-argument with Scott, her business partner, or maybe the last person still believing in her self-made story. You lied to everyone. Scott snapped. About the SUV, the loan, everything. Her mascara-streaked cheeks only added to the scene's intensity. And then she saw me. Her face transformed from shock to panic, eyes wide, lips trembling. You did this, she hissed. You ruined everything. I didn't shout. I didn't flinch. I simply met her gaze, steady, unyielding. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped holding everything together for you, I said softly, letting each word hang between us like a verdict. Her tears fell freely now, mascara streaking, face red with frustration and disbelief. Why would you do this? She whispered, voice cracking. Why not just help like before? Because Madison, I finally realized helping wasn't enough. Not when gratitude turned to entitlement. Not when love turned into erasure. I knelt, just enough to meet her eyes at her level. You told me at that dinner table, I said gently but firmly. Nobody needed me. And I believed you. I stopped being your safety net. I stopped being invisible. And I finally saw the truth. Scott, still standing to the side, absorbed it all. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He simply watched, understanding dawning. The reality of their carefully crafted narratives, the truth of my quiet contributions, and the depth of Madison's entitlement, all colliding in one room. The boutique had become a stage, and for the first time she wasn't in control. Every post, every curated smile, every proud declaration, undermined by reality. And for me that was enough. Standing up, I dusted off my coat. Actions have consequences, I told her. Not revenge. Not gloating. Just fact. Silent, inevitable, unarguable. I walked out into the crisp evening air. The sun was lowering itself over Franklin, painting the streets gold. The town didn't deserve it, but I didn't care. I had taken back what was mine. Not to punish her, not to humiliate her, but to reclaim the life I'd been holding together while everyone pretended it didn't exist. For the first time in years I felt light. Unburdened. Not a fixer. Not a caretaker. Not an invisible sibling. Just me. And Franklin, like every small town, would respond. Gossip would fly. Truth would spread. Reality would pierce the illusion. And I would watch it unfold, calm, composed, untouchable. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below what you would have done in this situation. And if you're enjoying this story, give it a like, it really helps the channel. The next morning, Franklin awoke to whispers that carried faster than the wind through the town. By sunrise, my inbox was full. Screenshots from neighbors, text chains from family friends, even local shop owners wondering aloud how Madison's empire had been built so suddenly. Every message, every shocked emoji, every incredulous comment was proof that the dominoes had fallen exactly where I wanted. I didn't rush to the boutique immediately. There was no thrill in confrontation for me, only clarity in execution. First I watched. Social media lit up like a wildfire, the illusion crumbling post by post. Madison's carefully curated persona, self-made, independent, unstoppable, was unraveling before the eyes of the very people she had deceived. People questioned timelines, cross-checked invoices, and pieced together a story I'd quietly supplied through years of silent support. Every post she had claimed as her triumph now carried the weight of my truth. When I finally arrived at Thread and Willow, the boutique felt different, smaller, fragile, exposed. The polished veneer she had shown the town was gone. Inside, she was mid-argument with Scott. Her voice was sharp, tense, teetering between rage and desperation. "You told everyone I built this alone," Scott accused, his face red. "Why didn't you tell me about the loan? Or the SUV?" Madison's mascara-streaked cheeks betrayed more than embarrassment. There was panic now, raw, uncontrolled, undeniable. And then she looked at me. Recognition hit her like a punch. "You did this," she spat, pointing toward the empty driveway where the SUV had once gleamed like a trophy. "You ruined everything." I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stepped closer, calm and unwavering. "I didn't ruin anything," I said quietly, each word deliberate. "I just stopped holding everything together for you." She blinked. But why? Why take everything away?" "Because Madison," I finally understood. My love, my care, my relentless support, it had become her entitlement. Every gift, every payment, every quiet intervention had been erased from memory. She had painted herself the heroine of a story I had kept alive. I knelt slightly, close enough to hold her gaze without being threatening. "You told me at that dinner," I reminded her softly, "nobody needed me. And I finally believed you. So I stopped being your safety net. I stopped being invisible. I reclaimed what was mine." Scott, standing back, finally processed the scene. His anger didn't waver toward me. He simply watched, comprehension dawning. He saw her truth, her lies, and my quiet authority. He realized she had relied on me for everything she claimed as her own. Madison's shoulders slumped. The fire in her eyes dimmed, replaced by disbelief. You loved me enough to give me everything," she whispered. "And I erased it." "Yes," I said, softly but firmly. "And that was the moment you finally faced reality. Not for punishment, not for revenge, but so the world and you would see the truth." The boutique felt heavy, charged with a new energy. I stood, brushing off my coat, the room silent except for the distant hum of the town outside. "Actions have consequences," I repeated, this time more gently, almost like a parting gift. "Even the quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones people think don't matter." I walked out. The cold Tennessee air wrapped around me, sharp but freeing. Each step back to my car was lighter than the last. The sun was setting over Franklin, painting the streets gold, highlighting the truth like a spotlight on every lie Madison had told herself and everyone else. I didn't rush. I didn't gloat. I simply walked, breathing in the clarity I had won. Franklin reacted exactly as expected. The gossip spread, whispers grew louder, and reality seeped into the cracks of Madison's carefully constructed world. Friends questioned posts, neighbors pieced together timelines, and even distant family finally understood. The boutique, the SUV, the empire, they hadn't been entirely her doing. Meanwhile, my parents left voicemails, angry, frantic, desperate. I didn't return a single call. Not from spite, but because I was finally practicing the one lesson I had learned too late: self-preservation. The weight of their expectations, their entitlement, their silence, it was no longer mine to carry. Returning to San Francisco felt like breathing for the first time in years. My apartment, familiar yet somehow lighter, welcomed me. I brewed tea, opened the windows, and let the city's hum remind me that I was not just a provider, not just a caretaker, not just the invisible sibling. I was me. I was whole. I was free. Revenge wasn't about cruelty. It wasn't about anger or humiliation. It was about reclaiming boundaries, reclaiming respect, reclaiming myself. Franklin, Madison, my family, they had all underestimated me for decades. And now, in quiet precision, I had made them see the truth. That night I sat back sipping tea, letting the city lights twinkle outside. I realized finally, the wealth I carried silently, money, resources, support, wasn't what made me powerful. The true victory lay in letting go, in closing the doors that drained me, in stepping out of storms I didn't create. And if you've ever been the one holding everything together, quietly, unnoticed, underappreciated, I hope my story reminds you, your worth is never defined by who fails to recognize it. Your boundaries, your clarity, your self-respect, those are the victories that no one can take from you. Tell me where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories like this. And don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss what comes next.